I took a master's degree at Rutgers in the psychology of reading, and all of it was about schwas and blends in phonics and skills, and children came in on a Saturday who were having trouble reading, and we were supposed to do all these skill sets with them. And I would say, children don't take their families off with their coats. We need to talk to their families, work with their families. So I did get the master's degree, but then went on to Columbia and left. I didn't take a reading degree. I went into family and community education because I wanted to work more holistically across sociology, anthropology, psychology. And I've had students say this to me, is that you can't do this with 25 kids or 30 kids or whatever it is that I'm talking about. And I'm saying, but yes, you can. And whether it's this or later things, you know, it is possible to, and children, if you give them the responsibility, they are very comfortable taking it. In fact, in that kind of environment, I didn't have any discipline problems. I mean, kids were busy, and it worked. It's when you try to focus them on something that they're really not interested in that there are going to be difficulties. And we were just busy. We had a lot to do, and we spent, I have to say, we spent nearly every afternoon, part of it painting, because I part of my undergraduate work was in fine art, and our walls were covered in paintings. I did a degree in the psychology of reading at Rutgers, but never fitted. It never made sense to me. It was so didactic, and one of the observations that I made was this is quite early on in the degree. I had to go and observe in a class that was for children that were struggling with reading, and they were using a tegistoscope, which I've never been able to say quite properly. And one of the things the teacher said to me was, they all know what a schwa is. And at that point, I had no idea what a schwa was. And I said to her that I thought that was really interesting. And it was also interesting that I'd learned to read, and I had never learned what a schwa was. Of course, I did learn when I was at Rutgers. And it's never seemed to me that it's something that a child needs to know, or actually that I need to know as an adult. Very useful for linguists, but so there was a huge mismatch. And I went to Columbia, and I knew what I wanted to do. I wanted to study families, which comes out of this long history of family as the center of the universe and the community and how people work together. I think center of the universe is a bit trite, but you know, it was a very big part of my life. And I was very interested in what families do with their children in supporting their reading and their development of reading, writing, and also academic work that is different from what happens in schools. And at that point in time, people were talking about reading. They very rarely talked about writing. And then Don Graves did a massive study on writing, and all of a sudden everyone was talking about writing as well. But at that point there was reading, in came writing, and then finally people started talking about literacy. And that's the point when I was doing my doctorate. And so I started focusing on literacy and the idea that I don't know how you separate reading from writing, because things have to be written before they can be read, and these kinds of interrelationships are so foundational to what being literate is. And so what I wanted to do was to think about literacy in family settings. And my mentor at Columbia, because I started talking about family literacy as a concept, and he said, if you're going to write a dissertation and you want to present this as a concept, then you have to show that family literacy, the kinds of literacy that is centered in families, is different than it is in society or in schools. And that was what my dissertation was. So the whole degree focused, actually, every paper I wrote had something to do with families and literacy. And I finished in less than 3 years, which I didn't realize was unusual. And I was asked, so I finished in the November of 1980, and I was asked if they could roll my degree into 81, because they hadn't realized how quickly I had gone through the degree program.